Oh crap! Come on.
No, I don't know. Who knows? The technology that you're talking about, to be specific, deep fakes, usually used to refer to video, but can also be applied to audio. And the technology is there. The thing with audio seems to be a little bit more advanced, like the ability to spoof somebody's speech and put words in their mouth effectively. With video, as far as I can tell, and again, that's a big caveat, but as far as I can tell, you still do have techniques, and some of them are pretty obvious to the naked eye, to tell which videos are fake and which videos are authentic. Now, this is driven by machine learning. The nature of that beast is that it tends to get better over time because there's a lot of money being thrown into research and development. So, we could already be to the point, or we could be there soon, where you can't you can't distinguish it, at least without prohibitively expensive processes for distinguishing the true from the false. And then one other quick follow up, and then I'll hand it to you, Jamarl. We got more callers too, and we're taking more. 202-521-1320. Tarif, on Uganda, this is one of the big, if you're an economist, this is one of the earlier things that you would learn, I hear. Two sort of related ideas here, one known as Dutch disease, the other known as a resource curse. I'll start with the second, resource curse. If you were a country with an abundance of natural resources, if for instance, if you have oil, if you have native oil that you can very easily mine, extract, that kind of thing. If you have uh, natural, just other natural resources, crystals, minerals, specifically minerals. I don't know where I brought crystals up from. If you can easily mine those, then this means that you're not investing as much. Those are sort of easy sources of profit. You're not investing nearly as much in like industry or manufacturing or other aspects of other sectors that will give you a pathway to a sort of fully developed economy. And so a lot of these countries that have natural resources in an abundance, but don't have pre-existing well-developed political institutions on the scale that you're used to in the West, tend to get stuck in that route. And then a related concept is Dutch disease, where if you have a big discovery, like for instance, massive oil reserves that get discovered, you tend to attract a bunch of foreign investment. And more often than not, that foreign investment is not good for the long-term growth of your economy. It gives foreign companies, and this, of course, is a big platform, is a big part of neoliberalism and people's critiques of it, arguably the largest part. It gives foreign companies, foreign entities, ownership of your resources. And that's where the IMF comes in. That's where the World Bank comes in. Anyway, Jamarl, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah. I mean, piggybacking on what you just said there, and not to keep it because we have a lot of other calls, but that capitalism doesn't stop at the shore, or this need for profit. Let's just call it that. This need or want for profit. This unquenchable urge of, hey, how can I make additional money? Oh, right. You guys have resources. You guys are a lot poorer than I am, so my dollar is worth $100 here, and I'm going to buy that resource, and I'm going to own that resource, and I'm going to. It's that. And the moment that you have something like that, where you have like a united fruit, where the countries don't even own themselves, yeah, there's something wrong with that. I mean, there's something wrong with that arrangement, if that arrangement to even take place. But yeah, we have a lot of callers. Other people would disagree. The libertarians would be like, yeah, screw that. You should be able to get whatever agreement that you want. Missing the fact that one side is at a great disadvantage in that agreement because that guy doesn't have shoes in the context of that agreement, meaning he's desperate. He's out of our choice. Let's go to the next one. Michael from Sydney. Michael, what's going on, man? How's it going?
Yeah, yeah, good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I'd just like to say, first on the COVID bill, I mean that's got so much pork fat in it, it might as well be a McDonald's stick shake. And at the end of the day, I agree with helping the people with some checks, but I mean, the statistics like if you like divide the bill by every American citizen, they can give them like $5,000 each. And they're getting like 1,400, or whatever they're getting, and the rest is going to business basically and to bail out businesses. So basically, you got a whole lot of vampire companies over there. They're not really zombies; they're really vampires, and they're living off the blood of the American people. And it's all over the world. It's everywhere. They sink their teeth into the blood of the economy, which is basically money, and they suck it out. I mean, you got evil pastors, I call him, Elon Musk. Apparently the richest man in the world. I mean, but his company doesn't turn a profit. He's still issuing debt to cover the debts he got last year. He's running a Ponzi scheme. Okay, he wanted to kill in Bolivia because, like you said, it's got lithium in it. The reason Bolivia had their whole revolution there and Evo Morales came to power is because Bechtel brought up the water rights in Bolivia. And the farmers, the Cocaleras, said, we're not having this, right? Because they were going in and pulling down all the tarpaulins and they were burning them and pushing them off the land because they were stealing water, right? It would run into the rivers, it would run into the water that Bechtel owned. and that created the whole movement in Bolivia, and they rose up against Bechtel, which started the whole anti-imperialist movement. And Evo Morales was the head of that. It was a miner, and the miners had things like dynamite, and they blocked all the roads, no trucks, nothing. The whole country was brought to a gridlock, and they were throwing dynamite at the police and stuff like that. I mean, this was a hardcore people's revolution against bloody outright fascist capitalism was taking away their livelihoods and their existence. And the same with the banks in America are doing, the corporations in America are doing, all over the world. They're sucking the people dry, stealing our money. They're living off our money. They get it for free. We have to pay for it. The banks get the negative interest rates, and we pay 5% for it. Like a massive.
You know what's wild about it, and something I kind of want to piggyback on, Michael. Thank you for the call, Michael. We act as if the decisions that people make don't have consequences. Meaning, somebody in Washington presses a button, or some banker makes the decision to short a particular, let's say, currency or a particular stock. And there's an end result to that. Even if you want to stay with just within the confines of laws, somebody presses a button, somebody dies somewhere else. Somebody presses a button, somebody goes without food in the United States or elsewhere. Yeah, we need to stop acting that the decisions that politicians make are somehow separate and distinct from the politician that makes them. Shane, what are your thoughts?
Agreed. We got another caller. I think we should go to him. We got Skip calling in from DC. First time caller, I believe. Skip, you're on the line. What's on your mind?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, go for it, Skip.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So I wanted to, when Kim was on, but hoping to ask you guys if we have numbers on basically the ratio of where these kids are, the specific countries these kids are actually coming up from, just in terms of drawing correlations between our, of course, like coups and sanctions and whatnot, in terms of continuing that argument.
Good question. I do not. I'll be straightforward. I'm sure that you can access them fairly easily, but I don't have them right now. And I like where your mind is going on that one. Jamarl, any comment?
That's a good question. I'm sitting here typing that up now and trying to figure out the answer. That's a great question. Because if you find that 90% come from one country, and you're hitting that country with sanctions, or you've just had a coup in that country like 10 years prior, then that's a big deal, right? If that guy's supposed to be a partner and he's trying to shove drugs into everybody's nose, that's a big deal, especially if a lot of people are coming from the country. I like the way his mind works. That's a good question.
I do too. Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that we could be wrong, and that makes it falsifiable, or we could be very right, and we should know about it, and we should report that. Regardless, we've got to close today's show out. Great call, Skip. Great calls, everybody. Thank you to our guests. Thank you, Jamarl Thomas, my co-host, for co-hosting the show with me. Thank you, Engineer Andre. Thank you, Producer Mary T. And thank you, that is you, for listening. We'll be back tomorrow, folks. Signing off, Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan. Have a great day.
Another one in the record books. I want to thank all of you for joining us. There was a question that somebody asked. Yeah, my computer shut down. It crashed. The blue screen of partial death came up. That always sucks because when it's in the middle of a show, it's in the middle of a show. And then loading back up, everything was like, you need to sign back into this. It's aggravating as all hell. And then this should be Shane. Yo, can you hear me?
Yo.
Oh, I can barely hear you.
Oh, yeah, I kind of lean away from my mic. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going fine. All right, hold on. I need to answer 2 questions. So, old gringo, get Steve Brumbine on to talk about Milton Friedman. What's the rest of this comment? To talk about Milton Friedman's helicopter money. It's a Trojan horse designed to gut programs and to give no price caps. Rent could be raised, etc. Right. So basically, if we're saying, all right, we're going to give people a basic wage, what will happen if the rent goes up? What happens if childcare goes up? What happens if healthcare goes up? Like, as opposed to, let's say we drop healthcare off as a price. Meaning, you could do that 2 different ways. You could say, look, I'm going to help the people at the bottom because they're not going to pay for healthcare. That's an expense that goes away. That's a tax that goes away almost. What if you do the same thing with education? Well, you have 2 of the biggest expenses that hit people with when they're growing up that are gone. What does it mean from the standpoint of this kind of basic level of freedom and basic level of choice? And yeah, I do think you need to have some level of basic income to make sure people have a basic living. But yeah, the helicopter money is another. Yeah, I've heard about that one. Basically, this idea of I'm going to give you this money as a certain amount. But this amount, especially if I'm cutting the programs and everything else associated with it, does it have the weight that it feels like when I first give it to you when you did have those programs? Yeah, we can get Steve back on. Steve is always a great guest. Yeah, he's always a great guest. So what did you think about the show today, Shane? I thought it was good. I thought the conversation with Kim before the computer dropped out was good. I thought the headlines were high energy and interesting and back and forth. Mark was always going to be somewhat of a slow interview, but not a bad interview because, he's more of an economist, he's more of a cerebral, he's more of a thinker. And he pulls us into that very specific mindset. Unless we're talking about something we would just completely disagree with, where it's just a fight. And in the beginning, that kind of was a fight. When I think about it. No, I thought it was good. Peter Oliver. So I love foreign policy abroad. The American audience, my audience is less sold on that. I don't give a shit if they're sold on it. They're going to get their potatoes and their peas in the context of this channel anyway. But no, I thought it was a good show. I thought it was relatively good. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, same. Yeah, we didn't have the same problem we did last week, which I kind of wasn't sure what had happened. I was figuring maybe, it's a Monday, we're kind of getting back to work, but even despite the daylight savings time transition. Oh, and by the way, your clock is off. The clock in the background of your
Yeah, it's wrong. Yeah, it's
you
wrong.
kind of move it up an hour. Anyway,
it's when it's wrong like that, everybody's like, "Dude, your clock is wrong." Everybody says it.
including me apparently.
Yeah, it's like it screws with them. It's like lying to them in the background or something. No, I'll change it. Now, I haven't been to bed yet. I was up. My wife and I, we were watching 2 horrible movies. I rented this Bruce Willis movie. And you think it's Bruce Willis, so he has some pride in himself when he's doing a movie. Not so much. I think Bruce Willis is just out for the paycheck right now. Have you seen some of the shit that he's been putting out recently?
I haven't, not in a long time.
It's horrible. It is horrible. And Shane, I can barely hear you. I need you to get a little bit closer.
God damn it. What was the name of the flick? What were you
watching? Oh, there were. So, one is called Breach. We didn't look at that one. I couldn't even bring myself to rent that. There was another one that he came out with that I was like, all right, this has a few celebs in it. I think like Frank Grillo, he's like B+ actor. And there was a few other guys who were like B+. And Bruce Willis, at this point, he doesn't have the look of a man this is not Die Hard, Bruce Willis. This is Bruce Willis that's in his 70s. He's well paid. He could take this or not. He might even be taking it as a favor, just because he's bored. And he doesn't even have the look of an actor anymore. Like the tense face, I don't even think he has that. It's just so bad. And my wife, we couldn't even finish it. And my wife is like, "Why are you forcing me to watch this?" And I'm like, "I just feel like we've gotten this far." And she's like, "Yeah, dog, no." Which means we ended up renting another film called Cosmopolis. Now this one, Patterson, the one that was in Twilight, in addition to a bunch of other celebrities. And that movie, if I was sitting at home, slightly stoned, that movie would be on point. But I had to be alone to watch it. If my wife was in the room and she's like, "What the fuck is this?" It never allows you to get into it in the way where you could soak into it. It's like you get kind of what it's saying, but you really need to soak into it to get it. It's not like Tenet. Like you can watch Tenet, and even if you're not entirely paying attention, it's like, that's a great fucking movie. This wasn't that. So we didn't even finish that movie. So we basically had 2 movies that we didn't get the chance to finish. That was our Sunday night. She was like, "You're 0 for 2, buddy." I said, "You helped me choose the last movie." My mom was here for her birthday, and we got to watch Tenet together. And
I haven't seen it.
You've never seen Tenet?
No.
Are you serious?
I am 100% serious.
Oh, I can't believe you've never seen Tenet. Your geek card is being revoked. It is so good. By Nolan?
You're talking about Christopher Nolan from last year. No,
yes.
Dude, I've been out of the media mainstream for
dude.
I had not even heard of this movie. I've been completely I guess I went the opposite direction.
Think of it this way. Oh God, man, you're gonna have me having a fucking geek fit. So think of it this way. Let's say that there's a device that has the ability to turn your molecules in whatever particular way they're arranged, whatever that thing that allows us to move forward in time, to allow you to move backwards. So from your perspective, everybody is going backwards. From everybody else's perspective, you're going backwards. And you can function going backwards like this. You can get into cars. Now, gravity, certain things, all of these things kind of function a little bit differently because things are going backwards. So think of it for the moment. Let's say you get stabbed. Now, in the normal circumstances, you get in a fight with a guy. The guy put a knife in you. Oh! You know, you're mad about it, so you don't cry or anything like that. You just push the guy. But the stabbing creates an injury in the arm. And over time, the further you get away from it, it gets better and better until it disappears. What does that look like going backwards? You would basically have something that develops on your arm magically almost. Whoa, there's something on my arm. And then it gets bigger and bigger and worse until you finally get to that moment when somebody stabs you. You're like, holy shit, somebody just stabbed me and I'm bleeding. But then immediately after, bam, goes away. Because at that point, the knife has been seemingly, from your perspective, pulled out. From the perspective of the person who's doing it, putting it in you. Now think of an entire movie like this. That's Tenet. And you add in agents, you add in a booming soundtrack, you add in guys in military gear punching people in the face very hard doing martial arts. Oh, it's like, it's not even martial, it's Krav Maga. It's not even martial arts. It's my job is to take you down, period. That's all I want to do in this moment.
Yeah, Krav Maga is brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal. But that looks like what the main character is doing it. The guy is black, which makes it even better. Like, because it adds like whatever that intangible thing is, it gives it that. Like, because he fits, it works. Like for me, the best characters when a race is put in or sex is that it seamlessly fit into the movie. I don't want you to beat me over the head with identity stuff. I hate that. Like if I'm watching The Craft and you're hitting me over the head over and over again with identity, and I'm like, God, you fucked this movie up. Or if I'm watching Star Trek Discovery and you're beating me over the head with identity, I'm like, you're fucking this movie up. Don't do that. I like it when it fits naturally in. And in Tenet, it just fit. Dude is fucking phenomenal in that film. And more importantly, it's a mind bender. I had to watch that film like 4 times before that shit sunk in. Because I was like, how does that work? That doesn't make sense. And after a while, I was like, oh, I get it. And then I started thinking of more shit. Like, what happens if somebody's pregnant? How does that look going backwards? Like, is the baby just there one day? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if it's a bullet wound, I get it. You know, the bullet, all of a sudden, is just there, almost magically. And then eventually gets to the point where the person is shot and the bullet comes back out. But it looks like the person is, bullets coming back. What about pregnancy? What does that look like? Like,
but how do they keep a conversation going? That sounds
well, at that point, they're not talking unless they're talking to somebody else who's with them.
I see.
And also, they can create. The dude created this kind of device where he was working with himself and the president in the past, where he could talk and have it translated so somebody in the past could hear it.
I see.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange. Like the bullets going backwards and all this other stuff. Like a bullet is in a wall that all of a sudden comes backward and loads it to the gun. It's so good. I'm shocked that you haven't seen this. You're going to lose points for this. My audience is going to take points.
Do it. Take it away. I didn't need them anyway. If you're gonna, no, I'm just kidding.
No, man, it's such a good film. My mom was sitting there like, "Whoa, what's that?" And I would stop it and explain it, and she was like, "Okay," and we'll forward it. And then something else would happen. I'd stop it and explain it, and she's like, "Boo, if you weren't here to explain this, I wouldn't know what the fuck is going on." She doesn't say what the fuck is going on. I'm saying that, but you know what I mean. But it's such a good film. You would love that film.
With the exception of Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan has done a couple of good mindfuck movies.
Inception, being one of the big ones, yeah.
What do you think about Interstellar?
Like, I'm telling you, man, Tenet is really good. Somebody, in fact,
Jamarl, Interstellar. What did you think about Interstellar?
Interstellar was great. I loved Interstellar. Because, look, we don't know what this is. We don't. And we make all sorts of assumptions. And people have this thing where it's like, I think they feel like they need to know in order to keep them feeling grounded. And so they would say, Jesus Christ did this. And they would come up with all of these architectural structure. There's angels. And then they come out every day at 12 o'clock to do church service for Jesus. And Jesus stands there and watches. Like, they have this elaborate idea of this stuff. Like, it's in their head, it's solid. There's something about the mystery of it that I could accept. That Nolan is trying to hit on that. Like basically, it's like, yeah, these guys are scientists. These guys are astronauts. These guys are hard nosed and etc. But in that scientist was a need for wonder. Like, what don't we know? And not just what don't we know. Is there something beyond who we are? And I think all of us on some level try to get that. I think when people they hit upon this notion of a void of sorts. It was like, what is my life going to be? Or what should I do with my life? And then they say, well, it's not enough for me to just want to do this. There needs to be something beyond me to do this. I need a God added to this. And I like the people who are more radically free with it, who just accepts the void. Be like, I don't know. And accept that. Christopher Nolan putting that into this film, I love that. Because basically something is happening where they are experiencing some phenomena that they don't get. The dad thinks it's bullshit. The daughter sits there and watches it and is like, wow, that's weird. That's really bizarre. And you find out that in some weird time dimension, and does the dad keep his memories of the time dimension? I don't remember that, if that was part of the movie. I remember, if I think at the end of it, he sees his daughter, then he just goes back out into space. Right? Like he sees his daughter, she's like ancient, she's about to die, and he's like, all right, daughter, I'm young, I'm virile, there's a woman out there that I left, I'm going to find her. And he gets back in the ship and goes out.
Yeah, man. I was really affected by that scene where he is in the interdimensional space.
Yeah.
And
I thought it was badass. Now, why were you affected by it? What's the part that where you're like, holy shit, this is phenomenal?
Just emotional. I thought that, I guess I'll look at it from the perspective of the director. I thought that Christopher Nolan did a very good job of putting that together and making it an emotional scene where he's influencing her. He's unknown, how many miles away he is from her, and yet he realized that he was connected to her in this deep way all the time, and that he's I don't know how to explain it because it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember it emotionally affecting me. Yeah, Christopher Nolan started with that stuff early. I've seen, I think, all of his films with the exception of maybe 3 or 4. I haven't seen Dunkirk, I didn't see The Prestige, and I didn't see his first one, and I haven't seen Tenet.
Prestige was phenomenal.
Memento. Did you ever see Memento?
Memento was good too. Memento was really good too. It's a mind fuck. Yeah, Memento was a mind fuck. He played around with time in that one without introducing sci-fi elements. It was all memory loss stuff, but you can see he's getting curious about that at that early stage. I thought it was good too. Yeah, he was getting. You got to see Prestige. Prestige was phenomenal. Like, it's hard to get across how, it's funny. The more we think about this, the more I think about this. He's so good. Like, just as the movies that he does is so good. Like The Prestige, if it was dark at the end of that, like that's with Wolverine and
Hugh Jackman.
and Batman. Yeah, Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman and
what's his name?
Bateman. Right. Bateman. No, it's not Bateman. It's It started with a B though.
Yeah, exactly.
I know his name.
Bale.
Christian Bale. Batman. Yeah. So
exactly.
both of them dueling actors. Dueling magicians, and it goes from like this kind of petty duel.
Don't plot spoil it.
I'm not gonna. Okay, my bad. But it's so good. It's so good. It's a low key. Fuck, man. It's sci-fi, but it's sci-fi in this kind of weird way where it's not. The thing that affects you most of the end is the human interaction, not the sci-fi. The sci-fi is almost like a background element to it. But it's so good. You got to see it. You got to read that movie.
I'll check it out. Harlow Jade Mermaid. You're talking about Flight of the Conchords, right? Bowie in space. I think that's what you're talking about. It's a reference to your chat room. I can't know, admittedly, Jamarl. Anyway, and we haven't even brought up the Batman films, which I believe those are the
Joker,
only
man. The Joker one is the Batman film. Like that. The Noble Lie. Let's talk about the Noble Lie. Now you can see this in Rick and Morty, where Morty tries to get molested or gets molested almost by the king of this particular place. And you find out that the king is a pedophile. But Morty accidentally kills this king. And the people were like, the people were happy. They were prosperous. It was a good land. And after the king was dead, his people go in and they find his stash and they're like, oh my God, nobody can speak of this. The king was a pedophile, despite the fact that the king was great in regards to keeping the world and society straight. So their thought was, nobody can know that the king was a pedophile. You got to go burn that so we can keep alive the king as a noble man. Well, that's Batman and what's his name? Harvey Dent. Batman is like, let the dogs go after me. And he's like running where the dogs are chasing him. He gets in his car because he wants to preserve the image of Harvey Dent as a pillar of justice and freedom for the country, despite the fact that Harvey Dent was just a man and graded and fell like any other man when he had a bad day.
I've heard people make this argument before, but isn't Batman kind of like a reactionary comic book figure? Like along with Superman, he is one of the more, defending the status quo of comic book figures. And
yes, Superman is, yeah. He really is. I mean, because so have you ever seen the book Red Sun?
no.
All right, so Red Sun is, what if Superman landed in Moscow? And if he grew up in the Soviet Union? And he did exactly what Superman did in the United States. He held the status quo. Because what does Superman say? Truth, justice, and the American way. Where does Superman get that from? Because he was raised in America. That's the only reason. Like he absorbed the value set of where he was and appropriated it into how can I be the best person that I can be? And when you think about, well, what does that mean being the best person? What does that mean? What does that mean? Best person in what context? There is no best person. On some level, you choose. What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like? What are the things you want to defend versus the things you don't? And you create that face for the world. Well, what does that look like for Superman, who's above it all? And, if Superman is basically holding the status quo, well, Superman would just do that anywhere Superman is. I mean, is there any point that Superman evolves beyond the ideology of wherever he is? Maybe, because Superman might end up being like a vampire where he lives for 1,000 years. But in the short time span that we know him, no, he's a defender of the status quo. No, I agree.
I want to pivot to another kind of related subject, and I may have to revoke your geek card if you haven't. Have you ever read the Sandman series by Neil Gaiman?
I have not read the Sandman series. I don't even know what the Sandman series is.
Dude,
so you're revoking my geek card too.
Are you at all into graphic novels? Do you ever read graphic novels?
Only like Marvel, like comic books more than anything else.
All right. No, man, there's a rich world of work out there. You should check out, if you haven't seen the TV show, but even if you have, you should check out Watchmen.
Loved Watchmen. Loved Watchmen.
Yes.
That movie is so good.
Well, the series too. But yes, that's a great movie. And then a more recent series, I think, put out by HBO, which I actually have not watched yet. But Watchmen, the graphic novel, is great. And Sandman is the fucking best. Sandman is the fucking best graphic novel. You need to check that out. It's more fantasy than science fiction, although there are science fiction elements. But man, you got to check that out, bro. Seriously.
Sandman. All right. Yeah, the Watchmen. Love Watchmen. My wife, I don't think she likes it that much. I love it. I love the dialogue. I love the voice. I love the language. Like when, what's his name? Oh God, what is his name with the changing faces?
I know what you're talking about.
Rosh.
Rorschach.
I can see the word. I just can't say it now.
Rorschach. It's
Rorschach, right?
Exactly.
When he's having this intro, and he's talking about like the streets are sewer and the gutters and they're overflowing, and he was like, they would beg. He said all the smooth talkers would beg for help, and I say no. It's like that dark language, and there's like a spitefulness about their ability to be smooth talkers and the way that they can engage in society in a way that he can't. He's jealous of that shit. But he's like, at the end of it all, when they need my help, when this cess fills up, they're going to scream for my help, and I'm going to say, with a certain degree of satisfaction, no. That's so dark. I love that.
Rorschach is like a merger. He's like the Joker if he had Batman's seriousness, and if he were equally cynical about society as the Joker.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Check out the graphic novel, man. Check out the graphic novel. And then seriously, check out Sandman. Sandman is the fucking best. They've been talking about doing I really couldn't fit into a movie because it's like, I think it's like 7 episodes long, and then there are a number of prologues and epilogues that they published along with it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot, and it's a Neil Gaiman. So I don't know if you've ever liked his work or if you've ever read it, but
the books that I used to read were physics books.
Yeah.
Honest to God. Like I even have some of them here. Most of them are burned up in the fire. Holographic Universe, The Science of God, Many Lives of Me Masters.
I was gonna say you lost your geek card, but you got it right back.
Yeah, those were the books I was into. I used to go to I was fascinated by that stuff. Because to me it's like, what the fuck is this? Like that question plagued me, like nobody's business. We are soaking in something that we just accept because it's so normal. But how weird is this? Consider it for the moment. You are supposedly, if under our understanding of all this stuff, on a rock that is flying at monstrous speeds through the cosmos. And there are other rocks that are also flying around the cosmos that are held together by certain forces, gravity, electromagnetism, etc., etc. And we are in a matter that has a point of view. And we are supposed to believe in the plausibility of a cell from somewhere finding other matter, other organisms, and saying, and somehow dividing, and not just dividing, but creating tissues, and then creating organs, and then creating a thing like a brain and eyes, and to maneuver and manipulate our particular environment. And for that to be that dead on, and supposedly happening within a certain span of time, and we don't even entirely get how we are paying it, like how does that inanimate thing become us sitting here talking about the cosmos? And does that fantastic thing happen elsewhere? Now, to me, that is the biggest fucking question on the planet. And that is something that we accept because we have to accept. And instead we go to work, we do our jobs, we have sex, play Xbox. And that question just lingers because nobody knows what the fuck that answer is. And you have physics and stuff that go into it. You have philosophers that try to hit it. You have religions that just make shit up about it. And you have this lingering question. And then you get new age stuff where it's like, all right, look, we're going to allow you to try to tap into this in a little bit of a different way. And people say, holy shit, I can't believe that I could do that. Like there's all of this stuff that is trying to, that we just accept because we don't know an answer to it. And it's very bizarre to me in the way this stuff is arranged. By the same token, you can go to sleep and you can have a dream where there's a camel that walks through your door and you accept that camel as it walks through the door and it walks out the door. Nothing weird about it at all. You wake up, it's like, whoa, I had a dream of a camel walk through the door. You accepted it? Yeah. Why? It just seems natural to me. Is it that? Is it that all of the weirdness and everything else is just positioned and set up for things to interact? Meaning, all of the stuff is postulated in the same way that the camel walks through the door and is accepted. Is it that? Is it that why all of this stuff looks so fucking weird? All of this stuff seems so strange. And we are going along with it because you have no choice but to go along with it. I don't know. I was always weirded out by it. I always wanted to know. And so for me, it was always this question of that. So the reading the books and stuff to do it for me. Like, don't get me wrong, like Star Trek and those type of stuff, totally in it. Totally in. But what I wanted to know wasn't necessarily given to me in those. And then when I didn't get it out of like the physics stuff, I mean, because basically what you get is theory. Like sometimes that theory trends into a heavy metaphysical stuff. It gets very strange after a while.
It does, but the physics, unless they choose to extrapolate a why out from it, it's always going to be about the how instead of the why. And
Yeah.
You know, what you're talking about there is like, if there is an ultimate context to it, or if there is a singular or some exterior origin for all this stuff, what is it? Why is it happening? And not just what is it, but
why?
Exactly. Yeah, why exactly? And you don't, as far as I can tell, you do not find that in physics unless they try to take it into the realm of religion or philosophy. Yeah. And you do find that stuff in religion or philosophy. What is it? There's a phrase. Oh gosh, I forget exactly how the saying goes, but a philosopher is like you're in a blind room. You're blind in a darkened room with a black cat, and a philosopher is with no black cat. The philosopher is the one who says, "God, I'm fucking bungling this horribly." The philosopher is the one who I'm failing it so horribly that I'm not going to be able to get to it. But basically, philosophy and religion are addressing different questions at us, and we at them as we try to answer the question of why. But are we going to get there? It's kind of.
I think the answer is yes. I think we do get there.
Well, but do we want to?
Yes, I want to. I want to know.
But do you?
Don't you want to know?
But isn't the joy of knowing the curiosity that takes you there? Isn't the joy of knowing the discovery?
Screw that. I mean, look.
Do you want a final answer to this stuff? Because a final answer, and I don't mean to diminish the Nazis, but a final answer, like a final solution, is a serious holocaust on the human imagination. If you get a final answer, it like wipes. At that point, all you can do is connect the dots in whatever way seems most useful to you. But you're out of discovering new dots.
There's a Star Trek reference for this. I don't know if you've ever watched Voyager. My wife doesn't like Voyager. I love Voyager. I think Janeway gets a bad rap. But Janeway has to go through this religious ritual in order to save one of her crewmates. She beams to the planet. She puts on the garb. She goes in. She says, okay, what do I need to do? They say, what do you want to do? She says, I need to get help for my crewmate. And they says, okay, well, do you want to talk to us? And she was like, oh, is talking part of the ritual? And like she goes through all of this stuff, like all of these rituals and everything else. And at the end of it, she finds out that it was very basic, that it really was just, look, we just need you to talk to us. When she gets back to the ship, the doctor's like, hey, we figured out what and why this worked that particular way, and here's it go. And she's leaving out there like, damn, she lost the mystery. Like the moment the science explained it, all of the wonder and mystery into all of this kind of religious aspect of it just went away for her, and she lost interest. It just killed her inside that mystery wasn't really a mystery at the end of the day. So yeah, you may have a point. Like this finding the answer. But I gotta be honest, I don't think we find the answer. I don't think it works that way.
Well, but then that's the thing. Maybe you're being optimistic there, because maybe you see on some level, like if we do find the answer, then the search is over, and the search is really what it's all about. You know, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, that kind of thing, but applied to knowledge.
I mean, I gotta be honest, I don't know what this is enough to even know. Like, for all I know, this could be a classroom. For all I know, this could be individual for each individual person. Meaning, I'm the only one that's in this room. Like, who the fuck knows? Like, it's hard to kind of get that across. Even the point could be unknown. Like, for example, the double slit experiment. If this world was physical materiality, like tangible, like rocks are rocks and you throw them and everything else, the double slit doesn't turn out the way it turns out. It doesn't turn out with a wave. Meaning, if it goes through a hole, it goes through a hole. It doesn't turn into, doesn't go through both. And it certainly doesn't go through both or one or the other, depending upon the consciousness that you apply to it.
Yeah.
We're interacting with this world in a fundamental and a deep way. And so if physics gets to the point where they're like, all right, let's kick the last plank. We're going to go with this idea that matter, time, and all of this stuff is flexible and relative. Okay, fair enough. What if the body is not really the body that we think it is? What if consciousness really is the avatar of all of this stuff? What if we just kick away the last plank? What if physics goes there? And they honestly make the case and says, look, we have no other resolution for this experiment. I know it seems small. I know it seems insignificant, but that's a big fucking deal that we can't figure out. And we can't figure out because we keep thinking of ourselves in these physical ways. If physics goes there, and they start actually thinking of the world in those terms, this notion of, is there something else, gets answered. Because the only way that works is if this is projected. And you already have some physicists who are like, yeah, this is projected. Hell, Neil deGrasse Tyson has even made the argument, like, I have a hard time arguing against the notion that this is being projected from something else. What that something else is, who the fuck knows? I don't even need to know what it is. I just need the premise of there's something else. And then at that point, physics starts sounding like religion.
Well, yeah, maybe, or there's just metaphysics. Maybe there's just.
It does. How can it not? If an argument is made by physicists, let's say a physicist steps up and says, look, I have no other way to explain that other than being projected from something else. There's something doing it. Now, we tend to think of this stuff from the highest level of technology. And so, if it was Rome, it was pipes. Nowadays, it's computers. At some point, it's virtual, that type of stuff.
100%.
So we think of that stuff in those terms. But if we're but it's hard to argue against it. Like, the double slit, I keep pointing out, that shouldn't turn out that way. And they live with that because they can't accept the fact that maybe it's not what we think it is.
I hear you on that one.
If that gets accepted.
Are you familiar with, I get the sort of hologramic argument. Are you familiar with Max Tegmark? Does that name ring any bells?
Tegmark is not familiar to me.
Tegmark. He's an interesting sort of physicist, mathematician dude who has this argument that basically we live in a universe that is constructed. It is mathematics on the deepest level. There's like a one-to-one correspondence between the universe that we live in and certain laws that we assume in math, but that at the same time, every possible variety of mathematics, every permutation of how these formal laws can fit together creates different types of universes that you either, people like us could live in, or in most cases, they wouldn't. But basically, it's all happening at once. All possible theories, all possible maths are true, we're just living in a universe that is uniquely constructed to hold our specific branch of mathematics. That's one theory that's pretty interesting. But have you ever seen? I'm interested if people in the chat keep bringing him up. Coming back to movies, have you ever seen like David Lynch's stuff, like Twin Peaks, or his movies, Mulholland Drive, those kinds of movies?
Yeah, no, I've heard of Twin Peaks. I don't think I've seen Twin Peaks. What was another one that he made?
Twin Peaks. He did Twin Peaks: The Return more recently, but I think that was his only TV show. He's done
Okay.
a bunch of movies. Mulholland Drive is the one that I watched most recently. Somebody in the chat brought up Inland Empire. Fire Walk with Me was based on Twin Peaks. Just a bunch of movies. Eraserhead is, I think, his first. I think that was like his college short that he put out, kind of. But one of his better known flicks. He did Elephant Man.
Elephant Man is familiar. That name is familiar. That's the one with the guy who was misshapen or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Elephantiasis. I actually have not seen that one.
Okay.
I've seen a number of his others. Wild at Heart is a good one, but Twin Peaks is fucking fantastic. If you haven't seen that,
Now, what is Twin Peaks? I've heard so much about that, but I don't know what that one is. And that one came out in like the 90s.
Yeah, well, the first, yeah, so there were, I believe, 2 seasons back in the day of Twin Peaks, but it's kind of weirdly split up. The first season was like 8 episodes or 10 episodes or something. Then the second season back in the early 90s was like 20 episodes long. So you
Yeah.
had this weird disparity. And then there's Twin Peaks: The Return, which he released in, what was it, like 2017,
Oh, this was
2018,
recent.
something like that. This was recent. And
This
with
guy was
largely
a
the same
cop, right?
cast.
He was like a detective or something.
Yeah, Detective Agent Dale Cooper.
Okay.
Played by Kyle MacLachlan. Kyle MacLachlan. Fan-fucking-tastic. It's incredibly surreal. It's incredibly surreal. But David Lynch is really good at sort of thinking symbolically and metaphysically on a very deep level.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard to follow, but if you watch a lot of his films, if you try to let your mind go a little bit vague for a second and you try to take it in without, I don't know how else to say it, but without restricting yourself to the confines of whatever logic you'd usually apply to narrative, like to film narrative or TV series narrative, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just really trippy stuff. And then he did a Dune movie too, which I also have not seen, that I hear is pretty crappy, but, but there you go.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, man. I'll check it out. I'll check out Sandman. I'll check out David Lynch, Twin Peaks. I swear to God, I feel like I've seen the cover for that thing so many times. I even know the guy is a cop, which gets across some awareness of it. But
he's a great character. Agent Dale Cooper is a fucking great character. He is an incredible character. And then they do something interesting with him in The Return, the more recent one that I won't get into. But he is not, I'll just put it like this, he is not your standard cop. At one point, fairly on in the first season, he sets up like a meeting where they're trying to determine the identity of the killer of this girl named Laura Palmer, where the whole first couple of seasons of Twin Peaks are all about determining who killed Laura Palmer. Who killed this, she was like a prom queen, popular girl at school, who turns out was involved in some very dark business. And I think it was like the 3rd or 4th episode or something like this. Dale Cooper sets up like a sort of fact-finding meeting where what they do is they don't talk about the facts. He has them like throw rocks at bottles in order, and like it's almost like palm reading, like in this like bottleomancy thing where they use throwing rocks at the bottles to narrow in on who killed the girl. And he goes into this extended speech on Tibet and like the plight of the Dalai Lama. I almost know. And maybe there's propaganda from the early 90s in there. Probably. I thought about that more recently.
That's too funny. That's too funny. No, man, those trippy movies, I love those things. My wife, it's funny. She could take them or leave them. It depends on the film, right? Like, for me, I could soak into something like that. But like, wow, I love the character and I love the language. And she's like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Are you sticking me with this? Or I'll fall asleep. That's the worst. Where I'd fall asleep and leave her with a movie that she had no intention of watching. She's like, God, I'm 80% through and might as well just do, it's like, you bastard, how dare you? But no, man, I'll check this out.
I want to throw one other at you. This is quite a bit more popular, and I'm sure you would have heard of this, and this is definitively sci-fi. It's a little bit more controversial because of the author, but have you ever read Ender's Game?
Yes,
the book
Ender's Game was good.
Yeah, I like that too. That was influential on.
What, because he committed to genocide?
He committed genocide, but he's like this. I think he's like 11 years old or something.
Yeah, he's a child. But he was being manipulated by larger forces.
he was being manipulated by larger forces, and then he committed genocide without knowing it. And that series is good, but then it also splits off into two tangents, where on the one hand you're following this character Bean, who's a relatively minor, he's a major character, but not Ender. He's not at that level. Follows Bean and goes into his history, and then there's another one which I think you would really enjoy. The Bean one is more about geopolitics. The other one follows Ender and his sister, and like gets into this world with like a single biological being that has like an integrated intelligence, and it's like scientists on this world trying to figure out what this biology is, what this new form of evolution they found is, and it's trippy. But yeah, I think somebody's talking about this. The Ender's Game movie sucked with Harrison Ford, and I forget the character who played Ender, but it was just not good.
I mean, it's one of those things. It's like when you see the book, etc. Yeah, those are fascinating. I think the thing is, you, regardless of what you are, there are limitations, right? I mean, Ender had clear limitations. He was just a person. I mean, his thing had to do with intellect and everything else, and what he was given to do. The genocide thing is extreme, and extreme for us. But we need to think about shit like this. And I don't mean, this is not pro-genocide. It's not that. It's I know what the fuck it was. Bruce Willis in that movie committed genocide. He killed 17 million people. That was the thing. And so this was like the lead character. And they went to get Bruce Willis. God, that movie was so bad. They went to get Bruce Willis. It's coming back to me now how bad that movie was. They decided within a first moment of first contact. Now, the human beings who were on the planet started shooting the aliens first. That's the first point. And within 40 minutes, they had decided to get Bruce Willis, who was known for killing 17 million people, and was very clear that he wanted to drop a Q-bomb on the alien species before they do it to us. Less than an hour had passed between the contact between all of us. And they were about to drop a bomb that will wipe out the area from Earth to Pluto. Think about that. Think about the scale of that level of destruction. And Bruce Willis is like, we got to drop that shit immediately. Less than an hour had passed in the movie. I'm like, we got to cut this shit off. This is horrible. It was so bad. It was so bad. Yeah, it was so bad.
Oh no, I saw your mic fell off. Oh,
yeah, it was so bad of a movie. Like, it's hard to get across how bad of a movie it was. And I'm like, there's no way why would Bruce Willis do this? Like he's the entire time he's like, we got to drop that bomb. We got to drop that bomb. That's all he's saying. We got to drop that bomb. I mean, but it's the fact that they went to a guy that dropped the bomb to kill 17 million people. That's the guy. That's the lead character in this. And that's the badass in this movie. And it's like, wait a minute. He killed 17 million people. That's kind of rough. I mean, is there any question about that? Like, does anybody have any kind of conversation like, whoa, that seems kind of extreme? And then throughout the movie, you meet people who are in the military who are like, great job dropping that bomb, killing those 17. It was either us or them. It was that. And then you got other people who kind of make the point of like, that's a lot of fucking people you killed. And he said, well, I didn't have a choice but to drop a bomb. He said, you are the one who approved dropping the bomb. What the fuck are you talking about? You were ordered to do it. Like, it's that where half of the people love him, half of the people hate him. But I hate him immediately. Like, he's a horrible fucking character. Within an hour, these guys are talking about dropping a bomb onto another civilization. They don't even know who shot first.
But and he's the protagonist, right? He is like the main
kind of
character.
I guess. I mean, is there a protagonist in this? I mean, if you think about it, we are talking about going into the cosmos. We don't know what's already in the cosmos. We don't even know if Earth is owned by something else. In a sense of owned in a way that we just don't get. We have no fucking clue. Like, we might go into the cosmos and something is like, yeah, you're not permitted to come out. And every ship that we come out, they blow their shit up. They say, you're not permitted to come out. And what do we do at that point? Do we build bigger ships? Build bigger weapons? Do we try to engage to figure out why they don't want us to come off of a particular spot? And what does that communication even look like? Do they have a good reason for not wanting us to come out? Does their reason matter? Like, all of this stuff is, at this point, what? Exopolitics. I mean, what if the nuclear bomb that set off adversely affected some of the habitat or some of the plane in which they interact? Do we know that? No, we don't. Do we even care? Do we think about it? The Nazis, strangely enough, thought about that. When they were thinking about building the bomb, they were like, what if this sets the atmosphere on fire? Like they were thinking about shit like that because they understood the scale of the bomb that what they were doing. We didn't care. We didn't care.
Yeah.
I guess my point is, how do we know if what we're doing on this planet is not having consequences off planet? And how do we even communicate to have that? And if another species is trying to have first contact, how does it do it in a way that doesn't trigger some kind of response in us that sends us off on this kind of war footing? All of this shit comes up. How do we know that in the same way they're not trying to keep NATO alive, that they think to themselves, we need to have a military organization to deal with this, and we're doing it entirely for the reasons of the geopolitics or the exopolitics of it? No, they're not a threat. But no, we're not going to let humanity know they're not a threat. It can even be that. That gives me qualms about Luis Elizondo, if I'm being bluntly honest. Kind of the reason I want him on the show.
And yet, and exactly, and you're pushing to get him on the show. I saw the email you sent out this weekend.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why. I don't have a framing for him. The guy's in counterintelligence, so right off the bat, I know that the guy's hiding something from me. But he's privy to secret information. Even the way he talks, it gets across that he's hiding information because there's stuff that he can't tell. And
yeah, it sounds like a limited hangout. From how you've put it, I haven't been paying attention to this stuff, obviously, nearly as closely as you have, but it sounds like it has the potential to be a limited hangout where they put some facts out, but they don't put out the key facts that you want to hear from them that would give you the deeper insight into it.
I remember there was a back and forth with him and MUFON, or him and one of the UFO organizations. And he responded to somebody in a way where it was like, you better accept the information you're being given and being happy about it. It was something like that. Like it was the sharp response because they were critical on some level of him. It's very strange. Like he's not, like it's a very strange thing in the way it seems to be the way the community is accepting him. You have some people who consider him, that guy's a spook, period. That's the way they see it. That guy's a spook. And everything that he says they're critical about. There are other people who seem to be more like, look, they're giving us information. We better take it. What's true? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. No, I don't know either.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem.
All right, coming back to it. I thought today's show, we didn't get finished wrapping today's show.
Oh, my bad. I told people what I thought. I thought that the show went well, and I thought you went into the notion of that the show wasn't fucked up like it was on last month. One day.
We did.
It was one of those.
No, totally. I thought I'm gonna try to rack my brain and see what went wrong today. I wish it was a good conversation though. Like you said, these things tend to go a little bit slower with Mark Frost, who, by the way, sent us an article to check out. I'll forward that to you, but I saw that coming in towards the end of the show.
Cool.
I think from the Wall Street Journal. Just one, if it was a criticism, but the show might have been better without it. I don't know. A conversation about wage stagnation. Oh wait, can you mute yourself? I got a bunch of feedback in my ear.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was adjusting the mic. My bad.
Pardon me. No, I'm not trying to be a dick. Mark Frost, wage stagnation. It would have just been cool to get deeper into that conversation. Like, what exactly has caused this? What can we do to fix it? That kind of thing. Because he answered in the most general of terms, talking about, well, there are governmental forces and then there are general market forces. And he didn't really get more specific. And admittedly, that's a hard nut to crack. But I would have been, it would have been cool to get a little bit deeper into it. Because that is the real issue, in my opinion. It's the long-term issue. Like, if people aren't making as much as they were in 1970, relative to what they can purchase, relative to how much basic commodities cost, relative to the cost of a house, all that stuff, that's a really fucking big problem for a supposedly developed or developing society, for a technologically advanced society. You would think, the population hasn't gone up that much. Productivity has gone up like crazy. You would think it would be cheaper. You would think a lot of stuff, pretty much everything, would be significantly cheaper as it's more widely available and technology has sped up production and made global trade easier, all that stuff. So I don't know. It would have been cool to get deeper into that conversation. As it was, we talked about minimum wage and then a basic job guarantee and the sort of philosophical issues surrounding that. But
I think sometimes you undercount how people have agency and people make decisions that are entirely out of their best interest. Meaning wages on some level will stay down because if they go up, people would have to pay out of their pocket for those wages. Meaning, if I got to pay you a higher wage, that's taken away from my own profits, which means I always have an incentive to pay you less because I make more. And if that's just built into it, and then you start looking at wage stagnation over the course of the years, where it's like, all right, this wage doesn't go up. What? It's like 20%, 30% less than it was in 1960 or something like that, whatever the number is. And you're right, it makes people not feel like they have a share of the pie. Meaning, this country is proceeding and it's proceeding without me, despite the fact that I'm putting my labor into it. It alienates a population. And if you're looking for why people get pissed off, yeah, I think you're right. I think on some level, it hits that notion of not being able to buy the things that you need and not being able to grow as the country grows. And this argument in the United States was always the American dream. And, what happens when you can't substantiate the conception of your country and the conception of yourself in the context of that country. That becomes problematic, especially in the context of you trying to keep a stable country. So I agree with you on it. The thing with Mark is so, he is so mercurial. Like, it's hard to pin him down on an answer. And honestly, he needs to stop with the libertarian shit. Just give it up, dog. Just stop. Just stop. Just stop. And I'm saying this in a good way, right? But because he's like recovering libertarian, but then he'll go into that shit about caring for the kids, caring for the poor, caring for the people who need it, and being poor doesn't mean you're bad. This is libertarian dogma that being poor means you're a horrible person. So let's, I don't know where Mark got his head right on that one. But no, hearing him talk like that is the weirdest fucking thing in the world for anybody to have even libertarian anywhere near their name. Even the whiff of it wouldn't be talking like that. I've met plenty of libertarians. I've never heard them say shit like that. Am I wrong? Usually it's like the dirty poor should die on the street if they don't have the money to buy healthcare. It's that. Like those people who screamed at Ron Paul, let him die, when they were at the Republican debates. Ron Paul was on stage and they were saying, so what about people with healthcare? If they can't pay for their healthcare, what should you do? And let them down the streets? And Ron Paul was trying to say no. The guy in the audience was like, no, let them die. Well, those are those guys, the red meters. The ones who are like, if they can't afford it, fuck them. They're bad to be born to a parent that was poor. Sucks for them. Now, if that person was born to a parent that was poor, they wouldn't say sucks for them. Their point of view would entirely change on that thing. Yeah, he's I don't know. The libertarians that I've met are not like that.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of types of libertarians out there. And,
no,
I think
not.
no, there are. There really are. Somebody's in the chat room bringing up libertarian socialism, and yes, it is a thing. I mean, one of the things I think some libertarians, and even Tom Luongo, although he's, in my opinion, out there on a bunch of stuff. And I think libertarians in general would do good to bring the conversation back to is the topic of community, which is you really want to have vibrant communities, because if you had functional, vibrant communities with more than enough assets to go around and like a strong social center, and I don't want like a return to the pastoral conservative days of yore, because all those problems too. But if you had strong communities, if you had a social support network on the local scale, and those communities were affluent, not just in social capital, but in physical capital, they would be able to prop a lot of people up, and you would be able to recede from the dependence on a federal government, which usually comes with, self-serving oligarchs and all these associated problems, whether it's corporatist or it's simply authoritarian or both. I've got those qualms with the federal government too, and I would have them with state governments as well. But I guess my point is, I remember Tom Luongo bringing this back. I'm sure if you push Mark on it a little bit, he would say something overlapping with it, at least in effect. You want strong communities. You want people to be able to support each other, because that is human nature on a deep, deep, deep level. And I can agree with a lot of that. But I also, I like larger infrastructure projects. I like the government pushing for things. If we were living in space right now, and we had more than enough food to go around, and the planet were greener than it's been in literally tens of thousands of years, and the government did that, I wouldn't care. I would say hallelujah and thank the status quo at that point. So I'm not ideological on this stuff, but I think they do have a point when it comes to stressing community when they do so. Yeah. But on the national political level, I think they push themselves, or they're pushed into those corners, and they do say some crazy stuff. And then there are just a bunch of fucking libertarian trolls online who are hardliners and who will, say that shit and we'll let them die. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I could watch Sam Cedar go like Sam Cedar has an open invite to all libertarians at any time they want to argue with him. And it is the funniest shit ever. He eats them alive. And it's like one of those things where he's had so many of those arguments that he just knows it. It's like if you're playing, and you and I are playing the Rio Lopez, and he's just waiting for his opening, and bam, hits him.
Jump. Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be something very minute, very specific, but enough where it like eats the, like they drown in it. It's like the street argument. It's like who builds the streets, right? And I've heard like libertarians flip out like who cares who builds the streets? Like losing their shit about that particular argument because there's something to be said like yeah, somebody does need to build the streets. Are you gonna have a military? Oh, we can have a private military. Okay. What about the contracts? Well, what do you mean by the contracts? Because they missed the point that part of the reason that government was formed in the first place was to deal with the different groups, the classes, and the conflict between the classes, including between the capitalists. Who signs the contracts? Who verifies the contracts?
I hear you. Coming back to Sam Cedar for a second, how does he do on other people's platforms? How is he as an interviewee, not an interviewer?
Who are you talking about?
Sam Cedar.
Oh, see, I haven't heard him in many interviews. That's the catch.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of him in interviews.
He likes home field advantage, I bet, where he can control the conversation.
Most of the time. But I've seen him when he was having the conversation with Brianna Joy Gray. He was on their platform. And when he, let's see, most of the time I've seen him on his own platform, but he is not a person to trifle with in an argument. I'll say that. Well, and I have my issues with Cedar, and I'll give him credit for that. That is not the guy to just run up on a random day.
Well, maybe, but if you can control the argument, you come across a lot stronger. Like if you're pulling the strings, if you can cut the other guy off whenever you want to, and you've got mic supremacy, so to speak, it's a lot easier than when it's the other way around.
I feel you. I would wager to you that he would give you mic supremacy, and he would still be a monster. Sam Cedar is very good at arguing. I'm not saying this lightly. And I've had my videos where I've gone after Sam Cedar whole hog, but it's very specific when I go after him. Like it's an argument that I'm like, all right, I think I can win this.
You can win this one.
Yeah. Because he's good. He's really good. But you're right. There's a weight of the show itself. Because it's like he has this hyenas in the background and stuff like that. But even when you take him out of that, he is very good at it. I've watched Sam Cedar was one of those guys like Keith Olbermann that I used to watch when I first started, like getting into like my political awareness. And I would watch, I think it was him, the stuff with Maddow when Bush was in office. And then it's like Obama gets in office and you're like, wait a minute, these people are acting somewhat different now. And the rules are still, what the hell is going on? And you start realizing, oh, I see, these guys are just Democrats. It's like they can play the role when it's a Republican, but basically they're Democrats. And then you get into the Trump era. And like you see this kind of, you see the break in the walls of sorts. Whatever I think of him, he is very good arguing. I give him that. I definitely give him that. I've seen people get eaten alive.
You're talking about Cedar and Olbermann, right?
No, not Olbermann. Olbermann is ridiculous. He's gotten ridiculous. He's gotten ridiculous. No, I'm talking about Cedar. I've never seen Olbermann argue with anybody. He just bloviates.
He was like the pre-Maddow. He was the MSNBC dude who was their party line Democrat, and now they're more packed with it, and so is CNN.
Yeah, but I've never seen him argue. In fact, the one thing that I saw him do that was like, dude, you just lost all respect. All respect. Anybody that should respect anybody should just lose it at that moment looking at you or what you just did. Donna Brazile comes out. Donna Brazile says Sanders was cheating. Now, the expectation that you would have is that other Democrats would say, what? I can't believe that. No, there's no way we would ever do something like that to Bernie Sanders. His people were saying that, but there's no way we would ever do it. Like, they were shocked and aghast by this. That's what should happen in a rational world where they actually believe that the Democratic Party didn't cheat Sanders. Keith Olbermann comes out and says she just lost her career. Not shock, not outrage, not, I can't believe that we did this. How dare we? Somebody needs to pay. No. Yeah, the issue here is what you said something about it. That's the issue. Yeah, he lost all respect at that moment for me. But no, look, I think some of these guys, if the world was different, they would be firmly on the left. But I think it's kind of like Joe Siegel, where it's, look, man, there's things that you try to get accomplished, and in order to get those things accomplished, you lump in with X or Y when the time demands it. I think that's Cedar. I mean, with a little extra bump, because I do think he's Democrats' man online, if that makes sense. I don't believe for a moment that Democrats cede environmental space in regards to areas where fights can be had, and that's including online. I think the same thing with Uyghur, where Uyghur comes out saying, this video is going to lose friends. Why, Uyghur? Why is that video going to use friends? Because I'm telling the truth. So you weren't telling the truth before, Uyghur? I was, what? Like, what? Uyghur? That's what we're asking you. You just said you're losing friends. What do you mean you're losing friends? Losing what friends? And why are you losing those friends? And why are you losing those friends now as opposed to before? What are you telling us different now than you were telling us before, Uyghur? Maybe you shouldn't have made that fucking video. How about that?
All of a sudden, he's like, hey, guys, it's not Uyghur, it's Uyghur. We're
right.
all in this together, folks.
Right.
No, just fucking...
Oh, by the way, somebody is taking the piss out of you on Twitter for a joke that you made. They was like, that shit ain't funny, Shane.
I did. I responded to it. I said,
did you? You responded to that. That's big of you.
Yeah. I don't want to just arbitrarily cede ground, but I said, true, it was a bad joke. I don't know. Because it was. It was like I was just in the moment. I have a dark sense of humor. I don't know how else to say it, but I also don't mean to diminish.
Yeah. In my head, I had that scene. That was the scene I was thinking about in my head. Yeah. I was just like, God, they did that to that woman. And not just her. They were like, they put that woman out in the street in order to ridicule and all that other stuff. The weird thing about that to me is everybody acknowledges it's a coup. And yet, you can't acknowledge that from a legal standpoint. Because
well, you are correct. They don't acknowledge it in the State Department briefing room, in the State Department press room.
But even in the country, like, they didn't say everybody were rounding all these people up to go to jail. They didn't lock her up on day one when you took power. It's, all right, we just won the election, and we're just functioning from there. Oh, look at this tax fraud. This tax fraud here that she broke the law on. And it's like, all right, fair enough. We can play this game. Tax fraud it is. Find everybody else. Tax fraud and the coup government stuff. Like, if they need to find reasons, like legal, legitimate reasons where they can put these people in prison. And the wild part is, based on our conversations with Camilla, some of these people are still going to be in positions of authority. That's terrifying. Because what that means is the more than they get in power, they're only in power as long as they need to be.
Yeah.
And they're going to take
but
it
also,
again.
like we were talking about, and I don't know how much this matters in Bolivia, but if they push back on the coup government too strongly, they're going to be painted as tyrants in the Western press. But if they do nothing, they risk, they risk another coup. They risk a resumption of the exact same chaos that they would do well to push back on.
By the way, and I'll leave it at this because we've gone like an hour. Ethiopia. So one of my texts, she says, we're talking about news. She never talks to me about news. Typically what happens is, hey, so what's going on? They know I have a radio show. And I tell them, I'm very excited about news when I talk about news. Like, very, very excited. My blood pressure, like, jumps like 30 points. And she's like, usually it's a dead eye. It's kind of like listening, but not. Just kind of like, you could tell that they're just somewhere else, even though that you're talking to them. But this time she says, what do you know about Ethiopia? And I started kicking my brain in gear. I was like, what do I know about Ethiopia? And I started recounting. Basically, I was like, oh, right, we've covered that. And I go explaining all of this stuff. And she says, she gets very intense. And she's like, they are lying about us. She said, we're not committing genocide. And then she pushes further. And to me, right, I'm a news guy. So my thought is, well, I don't really know that. And she says, well, I'm telling you, their uniforms, where these guys have exact uniforms like our soldiers, and they're turning around and just pretending as if that's what's taking place. She goes further. She makes the point of saying...
So wait, you're saying the Tigrayans are?
Yes, that's what she's saying. But she also makes the point that there is no such thing as Tigrayans and Ethiopians. They're just Ethiopians. And how, like, this is, like, painful. And, this is one of those things Theodros makes the point. Like, I have Tigrayans in my family. And so it's like this notion that these guys are wanting to take power. It's like, painful. They just don't want to give up power. That's the argument that she makes. They just don't want to give up power. They've had power for all that time. They suck the government dry of resources. And now these guys are in a position where they don't want to give it up. And so I'm like, but how do I know that they're not committing massacres? Like, for example...
If she's saying there are no Tigrayans, there are only Ethiopians, that feels forced.
No, But is it forced with Theodoros? It's not. He means it. Like, don't get me wrong.
But that's not what he says. He addresses the fact that there are a bunch of different ethnic minorities, and that he has Tigrayans in his family.
Right. Yeah, but they're
Yeah.
still Ethiopians. That's the point. Like, even when they were in charge, they were Tigrayans who were Ethiopians. It's like, I'm from Richmond, but I'm still American. Now, if we decide to pull away and Richmond cedes from the Union, or Virginia cedes from the Union, okay, then something else. We have the Civil War, Virginia is his own whatever, and now we can say we're for something else. If the Tigrayans decide that they want to pull away in this kind of civil war, then they're something else. But up until that point, they're just Ethiopians. Does that make sense? Like, what they seem like, it sounds like they're trying to form this kind of national identity on their own.
Well, they are.
Separate from Ethiopia.
No, they're pushing for secession at this point.
Yeah.
Because if they can't get power in Ethiopia, then they want to have a Tigrayan state. But I mean, fuck, look at the actual name of the organization. It is a Tigrayan People's Liberation Front. It's founded on an ethnic identity. So I guess what I'm saying is, it is idealistic to say that, well, there aren't these minorities. We're all Ethiopians.
That makes sense. No, I understand what you mean. That makes sense. I guess what I'm saying, despite them being ethnic minorities, they're still fucking Ethiopians. I guess in my mind. But they see themselves as something else. I mean, but if they see themselves as something else, they see themselves as something else. And her point was, if they don't want to be part of Ethiopia, shouldn't be part of Ethiopia. She was like, I don't want to fight a civil war over this.
Yep. Well,
so I don't blame her. By the same token, her point is the Eritrean army is helping the Ethiopian army. The Tigrayans try to get the help from the Eritreans. And it's like, how does that work? I mean, they fought a war with the Eritreans for God knows how fucking long. I mean, it was the new president that came in that was able to get the peace deal. And that guy with the peace deal is getting help from the Eritreans to beat the shit out of the Tigrayans. Like, it's very strange and very weird. And her point is, the UN is taking the side of the Tigrayans.
Well, here's another question. This is maybe too broad, but are we past the era of ethnic nationalism, past the era of nationalism as such, nations founded along ethnic lines? Because I feel like the world community, quote unquote, tried to move past that pretty definitively in the middle of this past century.
They tried. That didn't work too well in the Middle East, but they tried.
But maybe another way to put this is, ethnic nationalism on the way out, or is it going to continue to be a determining factor in many nations around the world? What's your take?
It depends on whether cosmopolitanism is one of those things that could be driven in. Like, if we have a shared take, then yes, it could be on its way out. The problem is, how do you stop people from thinking of themselves as tribes? That's the catch. When shit hits the fan, people tend to think of themselves as tribes. Like, I don't know how you get to the Star Trek world where the black guy gets their dressing down by the white captain, and there's nothing in his head that says, this motherfucker is racist. Like, there's nothing there. There's not even like a wisp of, this person doesn't like me because of race or something like that. There's no false consciousness. It's, that person is a man, I'm a man, we see each other as equals, period. It's that.
Well, we're not even past fucking families. We're not
Right.
past like the most basic
Right.
level of political determination other than the individual,
Right.
where, you look at obviously monarchies and aristocracies, and you'd have titles that were passed through generations based on your last name and who was your dad. And yet you still look and, they're the Kennedys, they're the Clintons, they're the Romneys, etc. And they're the Trumps, etc.
Well, I do think you need something to tether yourself down to. I don't think we're untethered. I had a good conversation with a guy in Egypt. We were at a casino, and we talked for like 5 hours. It was like 3 a.m, no shit. My wife sat there dutifully and just like, oh my fucking God. And we got into this conversation on foreign policy. We got into this conversation on Iraq, U.S. foreign, all that stuff. And he basically made the point of saying, look, people need to be tethered to something. And that's where they get their identity from. And at the time I was like, oh, yeah, I don't necessarily buy that. But the more I think about it, he's right. Like, whether it's a group that says we did jazz. His thing was black people need to think that they did jazz. And I was like, okay. I was like, he's real insistent about this, right? In a way that a foreigner thinks he knows somebody from somewhere else. But his point was, African Americans, that is something that is definitive. That is something that is a world treasure of something. And as such, you should be able to find value in that. And in such, valuing yourself. He's trying to find something, basically saying that it's the creation and it's the things that a group creates on some level and how that group is perceived that creates this kind of eternal value of the individual.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think that's more family though. I think that's
Well, yeah.
less. Now, what do you think? I mean, I my thought was that has to be more family oriented as opposed, meaning whatever my family puts in me is going to make me fortify me or undermine me on some level in how I deal with the problems of the world. If
Well,
I,
okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, it's just, I mean, if you look at where ethnic nationalism came from, it came to rise, 19th century at the very earliest, late 19th century, late 18th century, but really 19th century. And this is right as the Industrial Revolution and other forces, the Enlightenment, are breaking up, hereditary monarchy and the power of entitled aristocracy in the West. So you have this breakdown of those things. You see all these ideologies rising in response to it. One of those ideologies, fascism, most closely associated with ethnic nationalism. But I guess I'll put it like this. I want to come back to your actual point. It's like, okay, you need to tether yourself in something. I don't like any of the tethers I see. If you tether yourself to family too strongly, then again, you get aristocracy. If you tether yourself to a nation or an ethnic group, really, the obvious problems there. And then I guess for a while there, the thing was you tether yourself to a mental identity, like to a set of concepts, whether that's ideology. Formerly, for a long time, it was religion, but really it became ideology. I don't like where that goes. I don't, because then it turns into what everything we're seeing now with stupid fucking culture wars, where people are basically using points of political interest as tokens for their identities and bickering over their personalities instead of actually talking about the truth or what's best or those kinds of things. It becomes overly politicized because, again, when you tie it into your identity, then you're not just arguing about the ideas, you're arguing about your ego. And so if those are, I don't want to say that that's exhaustive, but if those are three of some of the ways you can tether your identity, I don't like any of them. I don't like any of them, man, especially as a basis for a political
It
system.
sounds like you're just looking for a new master. Anywhere you go is where you're at. That's, I mean, honestly, and there's no magic. It's just subjective identities where you find where you end up on the scale.
And you
Whatever that
get more
scale
and
is.
more hollowed out. You
Yeah.
get the thing is your identity becomes increasingly abstracted from you as a person, and this is part of like the atomization of society.
Well, wait.
Go for it.
That's assuming that there's you as a person to begin with.
Well, maybe, but
Like what's behind the machine? Like where's
I
the
hear
ghost of
you,
the machine
but
on some level?
okay,
Like
but
what
we're
is
having
like meaning
you and I.
when a person takes on that ideology, how do you know this just not them? Like all of it is a mask on some level. So what's the thing behind the mask?
Well, if
And
all
is
of
there
it is a
anything behind
mask,
the mask?
yeah, well, that's the thing. If all of it is a mask, if it's only appearances of appearances of appearances, then there is nothing behind the mask. And it's like at that point the dualism breaks down, and suddenly all you have is what is. It's not even subjective and objective anymore. It's just reality, which is both, ambiguous and subjective and objective and knowable and all these things at once. But I do think there's something where if you go from your association with your family, who are people you know and have known for your entire life, if you go from that to ethnic nationalism, where it's an ethnic grouping that your family is a member of, but it's this larger unknowable mass that has a culture, that has, identifiable things. If you go from that to an ideology where you don't know who adheres to it, you have no idea who's in it. It's like these increasing levels of abstraction that take you away from yourself. And all of a sudden, instead of being a person who knows who you are, you have to fill that person in with these surrogates for it. And this is where consumerism comes in. And this is where political or conceptual consumerism comes in, where suddenly I don't know how else to say it. You're trying to assert yourself into existence by making political statements. You're like giving your fucking whole being away to the machinery of this grand political beast, and that sounds evil to me. That's all.
So it sounds evil.
It does.
I think what happens is people. Look, I think life. I think at their core, people know that they're alone. I think they get it. I think when they wake up alone, wake up in the morning, all that stuff. When you're in pain, all of those things are basically done alone. And as such, as you are alone, you're weak, you're vulnerable. And I think sometimes people look for allies. Sometimes they do those things in social spheres. Sometimes it's militaristic. Sometimes it's identities, as you say. The thing is, wherever you are is where you're at on some level. And I agree with you. I know what you mean when you say, I think I know what you mean when you say, like, they get further away from themselves. And my thing is always, well, what does it mean for them to be themselves in the first place? Is that just what do you like? What do you dislike? What do you enjoy? Meaning the things that you bring towards you and the things that you push away from you are basically the things that who you are on some level. Is that dramatically different than filling yourself with the other ideologies? And on some level, does it, what you fill yourself with, give some indication as to who you are? Meaning, if you're filling yourself with that political ideology, you're doing it for a reason, and that in and of itself is instructive.
Maybe, I mean, and this is where, like, I think we're one of the deep problems in like, and I will use the phrase human nature where that comes in, which is, okay, imagine, well, why do you associate yourself with your family? Because it's good for the family. Why do you associate yourself with an ethnic group? Well, because it's good for whatever nation or whatever, political representation that ethnic group has. Why do you associate yourself with an ideology? Because it's good for that ideology and, being enacted in different political spheres. Those are all political designations. Identity has over time become increasingly abstract and increasingly political. And maybe there's something about human nature that really wants to rebel against politics and just wants to be a human being living in a loving and compassionate society. And if you go back to the origins of human society, it's like it was less abstract, it was more personal. And I would argue, in a weird way, the politics was less political. The politics was more personal. You saw the problems that you had to contend with as a community in your face, and you didn't get lost in stupid fucking debates or stupid long-term blood feuds over, which member of the Hatfields killed which member of the McCoys, over the Amarans and the Tigrayans killing each other, or over socialism versus capitalism. It's like these are increasing levels of abstraction and political involvement that we've given our souls away to, and I don't think that's good for us.
It's not that it's good for us. It's life has gotten complicated. That's all. I mean, what it means to be a person has changed. Or for that matter, what it means to be a part of a society has changed. I mean, there is no normal in this context. There is no, what's a normal human being? Okay, what's a normal human being within this context? That's the only way you could really ever ask that question. So I feel you on that, in the sense that when we were cavemen, we had different thoughts. We're not cavemen anymore, at least not in the way that, we're flying cars. I want my flying car. The moment that we get there, you know what I mean? Like, our society and our world has just radically changed based on the technology.
We live in plaster clay. We live in plaster caves. I mean, I'm living in a house. This is it's a cubic cave, but it's a cave if I ever saw one.
It is, but there was no cell phone, and there was no nuclear bomb, and there was no ability for a group to go with larger weapons in order to mow down a large number of people. The politics of it has radically shifted based on the technology, based on the interpersonal relationships, based on the configuration of the world that's changed since the wars. I mean, for God's sake, look at the Middle East. I mean, Britain basically carved that up. Just, all right, I'm going to just draw this line on the map. This is going to be this place. This is going to be Syria. Yeah, fuck it, let's do it. They did that, right? And so all of that stuff radically changed. So what's the normal in this context? There is no normal. The normal is whatever the hell we make it at any particular moment, and it's always transient. And so I think I know what you're saying in this thing of, look, what does it mean to be a person? And is there something that's more wholesome and more, honest, more wholesome in regards to fulfilling to the individual? Maybe that's where we're looking at this. And that gets radically shifted into, look, we need to make enough money in order to make sure the kid can go to school, to make sure the car can be paid, to make sure that, et cetera. And your life becomes that. 40 hours, 50 hours, that. Work. It aggravates the shit out of me. And I work from home. And I'm saying this from the standpoint of my wife, where I'm like, God, you're working again? It's like, part of me working this much is so you don't have to do that. And yet, that's not the case. We don't even have kids. We just have 2 dogs. One is a puppy, but still, you know what I mean? It just, your life shifts. When my wife and I was traveling, and we just was jumping from place to place, that is a radically different life. That is a far more wholesome life. Like, meaning fulfilling life. You'd have no idea what's coming up the next day. You have no idea who you're going to bump into. You have no idea where you're going to end up. You have no idea who you're going to see. You have no idea, basically, what your days are going to be like. And if you compare that to what is typical in our daily life, you know exactly how the next day is going to go, and the day after that, and the day after that. It is a soul-numbing experience to exist like this. It's so mundane. As opposed to, all right, we're in this country. Oh, fuck, we missed the airlines. We're stuck in Israel for a day. All right, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. Like, it's that. And that's on some level, it's exciting, despite the fact that there's a certain level of danger that's built into it. It's a different thing. I guess I'm saying, for me, I always said I was a better person when I was traveling. I was more fit, exercise more active, all that stuff. And that stuff gets kind of whittled away into all.
Well, I mean, we're nomads. We are nomads by default. First
Yeah.
and foremost, we were nomads. You know, human beings like Homo sapiens. We traveled. You had to travel. You know, whether it's constantly or whether you had a couple of different points that you would migrate between as different forages and hunts came into opportunity. You know what I mean? So like traveling is built into us on the most basic level. Agrarianism came a lot later. So there's something good about that. I don't
That's
know.
true. That's true.
One quick note.
Modernity. The whole settling down. And it's like, hey, we could put grain here. And then you're stuck there the moment that you put it there. And then you have, all right, well, we have to get this, we need that, and we need that. And you find all of these things that you need that you didn't necessarily, just to be able to maintain the fact that you have the grain and the storage and all.
And then those, you purchase those accoutrements not because they're necessary, but because they support your identity.
Yeah.
These are, that's classic criticism of consumerism. Quick reminder, we have that interview in 28 minutes. You might have seen this from India, but we're talking with
for fuck's sake. Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, I remember that one. I did see that one. All right, I saw that one. I wasn't gonna miss it.
And I need to go take a piss and probably eat some food. Not in
No,
the,
you're fine.
LA,
You're fine.
that order.
We still have work to do by 12:30. So.
We do, yeah.
All right, my man. A philosophy hour. We don't do this on the show for good reason. It's like, don't do that shit on the show. Don't do that shit on the show. Get that shit out in other ways. So fair enough.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that stuff it's. We live in a weird world. That's all. And I can't. And again, and all of that. The weirdest of that is you haven't seen Tenet. Shocked by that.
I want to. Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
you got to go see that, man. You have to see that shit tonight. We have to talk about that shit on the show.
And somebody will do. And somebody in the chat room, indigenous peoples identify themselves within their environment, the other animals and terrain they found around them. I submit we need to do that more within a natural world environment instead. And I 100% fucking agree.
Very nice.
I want to get back into that. One of my long-term goals is to like do a travel log where like I learn about ecology and describe the ecologies of the places I'm traveling in as I travel through them, because it's like it's bringing a lot of what's human out in you, something like that, where like you get to, I don't know, I'm drifting into my own shit now, but you get to know the place you're in as you're going through it, and not just the place you're in, its culture, but literally the physical, biological environment, what actually exists, how these systems interact with each other. And if you do that while you're moving, then it's like you're getting a deeper sense of what the world is as you're traveling through it. And that just sounds beautiful to me. But anyway.
Badass. All right. I'm going to end this. Like, share, and subscribe. And Shane, I will see you in 24 minutes at this point, give or take.
Sounds good. All right, talk soon.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. No, I had no intention of being on here that long. But fuck it. Whatever. All right, guys. Have a go. Oh, wait. Somebody. Oh, I think I answered that question. Right? I think I answered it. Did I answer that? Yes. Right here. Great show. Love the after show. Oh, calls. I think I answered it. That was last time. All right, guys. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. And I'm going to say subscribe because I have work to do that I didn't fucking know I had to do. So I'll see you guys probably a little bit later today.